चालू है Good morning, everyone. I'm Ashok Dasgupta. Mr. Dhawal will be a little late, so I would like to start the session. I think we had a very interesting discussion yesterday on geopolitics. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure you all have enjoyed. And after that, we had a gala party dinner. Today, the whole day we'll be discussing various topics related to AI, its influence on power sector. That is the topic being discussed in many seminars and conferences these days, and we need that. And tomorrow also, whole day, we will have this conference, ending with the Power Awards. And this year, we made a little difference from last year, is that in Power Awards, we give awards to various categories under the power sector, those who have excelled themselves during the year. And there's also a category called innovation, that what innovation you've made either in technical or techno-commercial or in commercial field related to power sector. So we thought, this year we're also requesting those who will be awarded with Innovation Award to make a short presentation. We didn't do it last year, but this year we'll do it. But I'm sure all of you are very comfortable where you're staying and you have been looked after by our people here in resort. Yesterday, we had Mr. Prashar, Colonel Ajay Singh, because Mr. Abhijit Ayar Mitra couldn't come. It was chaired by Dr. Pramod Dev. And today, I don't think the Gaurav Gupta IAS is not there. So we're going to start the first session on geopolitics and energy security. We had set the tone last evening. We'll continue with that, and for which we have 4 speakers. So may I request Major General Ashok Kumar Mehta, whom we all met yesterday, please come to the dais. Let's give him a big hand. Mr. R.N. Prashar, former chairman of HERC. Prashar Saab. Colonel Ajay Singh, former army officer and also an author. Please. This session will be chaired by Mr. Prashar, and it will run for 1 hour duration. Over to you now, Mr. Prashar.
Friends, yesterday we had a look at the emerging issues in geopolitics, and today we'll see its effects on energy security. Actually, it has 3 aspects, and they're not really complementary to each other. In fact, in the 3 aspects, there's some antagonism. The energy security, transition to sustainability, and the third, which is normally called excess, but I call it affordability, because excess without affordability is meaningless. This picture itself has some symbolism. In the real world, those who are close to each other compete with each other. And those who are rivals, they keep distance from that. So, yesterday I talked about how diplomacy is weakening. And a new phenomenon has come up. And an author has called it geosemitics, shaming nations by the leaders of other nations. China is very good at it. You would remember last year, they published 2 papers. The first said, China is a democratic country. And the second said, USA is not a democratic country. So this is part of geosemitics. Nations are using it to hide their weaknesses and to put the rival nations in poor light. Putin did that before invading Ukraine. He called them, Ukrainians and leadership, Nazis. And we all know that Zelensky is a Jew. How a Jew can be a Nazi, it's very difficult to comprehend. It was part of his geosemitics. The conflicting goals of ensuring energy security, transition towards sustainability, and access for poor countries at affordable prices, I said they don't go together. This year has been called the year of elections. 80 countries will have elections in this year. And when elections are there, then accessibility becomes the most important issue at affordable prices, accessibility at affordable prices. And all the others take a back seat. Similarly, when a war is there, then energy security takes the front seat and all others take a back seat. And the second one, sustainability, is generally then in the back seat. So, whether it is elections or wars, the governments feel obliged to have greater intervention. All democracies are having interventions in markets. And so democracies end up doing what China does always. So the distinction between the two becomes very difficult. Which is a market economy, which is a controlled economy. The distinction is vanishing. An example is the Inflation Reduction Act of the USA. Of course, in India, the distinction between market and the state was always a little blurred. So it's not much of a problem for us. Nations are monopolizing technology, production, supply chains, and therefore they're causing fragmentation in the market. In a fragmented market, it is the weak who will always suffer. The developing countries will always suffer. The strong will carry the day. Either they are the monopolizing ones or they have the resources to purchase the monopoly power. This is an example of supply chains monopoly. While China is generally weak in the raw materials, except the last two, but in processing and refining, it has monopoly up to 97%, 98%. In uncoated spherical graphite, it is 98%. In anode-grade synthetic graphite, it is 97%. And all others are very, very high. So this is the kind of monopoly China is enjoying in a very critical area where not only the electric vehicles, but the future of off-grid communities where towns set up their own generation and distribution system based on solar and wind, or maybe in future hydrogen. But they need to store And that storage is seriously compromised by this monopoly. This concern was raised by Brazil at COP28 recently. But interestingly, Brazil was speaking on behalf of what are called basic countries. That is BRICS minus Russia, because Russia is a different player in the energy sector. So these four countries, Brazil, China, India, and South Africa, they call themselves the group of basic countries. And Brazil was speaking on behalf of these four, which includes China. So one of the monopolists was part of the group, and they were actually speaking against monopoly, maybe an exercise in geosemitics, perhaps. These are the three realities of life which nobody can disregard. The poor countries say that we won't remain poor to save the planet. We won't slow down our growth and consumption to save the planet. The rich say we'll not reduce our consumption to save the planet. And so perhaps ultimately the only effort which can be made is about the source of energy and efficiency of energy use. All these efforts at moving towards net zero, I'll have a bit of that ahead. They suffer from serious difficulties. And this laggard tendency, you know, in South Africa, when the European settlers were attacked by the Zulus, the natives, they used to put their ox carts around them in a circle and then fire from inside that circle. So this laggard tendency is coming to the rich countries, and they are forming their exclusive clubs, the recent one being the G7 Climate Club. So I don't think developing countries can expect any sympathetic consideration from this G7 Climate Club. A lot of people participated in COP28, you know. A lot of people have signed the methane pledge. But this methane business itself has a lot of hidden factors. For example, wherever rice is grown, by ponding water, a lot of methane is generated. And we don't talk about it because the farmers' lobby is a holy cow. So we don't talk about methane generated by paddy fields all over the world, except where it is grown in running water. Parts of Odisha, you know, grow paddy in running water. Water enters the field at one end and goes out the other. No methane is generated there. But wherever there is stagnant water in paddy fields, a lot of methane is generated. Similarly, this cow dung business. Now, Delhi papers are always full at a particular time of the year that Punjab and Haryana farmers are burning cow dung and causing pollution in Delhi. Now, a question can be asked. If that cow dung does not get burnt, it's left in the fields, what happens to it? We leave the cow dung in the fields, it will decay, and that decay will produce methane. So, whether it is burnt or not, even if you put in a biodigester, the resulting gas will be burnt and produce carbon dioxide. So if it is burnt either way as a gas or as a fuel, solid fuel, there will be carbon dioxide. If it is left in the fields, it's methane. Which one is more deadly? Methane. So there are a lot of obfuscation about methane. And I don't say it is dishonest, but perhaps people who have not lived in the villages, maybe they don't understand. I have lived in a village, I know all that. A lot of promises have been made by the World Bank that will finance for climate change and help the developing countries. But a lot of promises have come, and I don't know how many will be fulfilled. The loss and damage fund, it's not even 1 billion today. And at COP28, they have promised 100 billion. Now, in 1 year, from less than 1 billion, you will take it to 100 billion. Good to promise when you know you're not going to held to account for that. Then they are talking of a fund for tripling the renewable energy. This may be achievable to 11,000 gigawatt. Efficiency from 2% to 4%, this may also be achievable. I say achievable. I don't say it will be achieved. And next COP29 will be held in Baku, and we'll know what's happening to that. This collective quantified goal is too ambitious to befool anyone. They have said it will need $6 trillion, $850 billion every month, every year. I don't know what they're talking about. Maybe people are just talking about the demon in front, knowing that they can't do anything about it, so better talk about it. The CCS, carbon capture and sequestration, it's become big business in America. People get a lot of dollars from the government. They lay pipelines, take the carbon dioxide to abandoned oil fields, and use this carbon dioxide, which is under pressure, to produce more oil from those dead fields. Or they use this carbon dioxide and use it for fracking, which produces more fuel. So a lot of dishonesty is at play in these efforts at so-called zero net emissions. The time has come in the last 3-4 years, we have been seeing that somewhere or the other there is a conflict going on. 2 or more parties are at war with each other. And those of us who have been in administration, we know that wartime planning and peacetime planning are different things. In wartime, you have to just survive. You are not bothered about efficiency. War is the most inefficient thing. In war, things are destroyed. So wartime planning is going on. Even today, we are in wartime planning mode. Sooner or later, the wars will end, peacetime will come, and then we'll find that the modes we adopted in wartime are not good enough for peacetime. In wartime, it is always the security of state, security of supply, which will take precedence. So when people feel that the existing arrangements are very good, but not workable, so they start thinking of alternatives which may not be that good, but may be workable. And you would know that Israel is talking of a parallel Suez Canal on the Israel-Gaza border. Then they are already operating a land route. They take goods at the Gulf of Aden from Bahrain, transport them overland through Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and bring them to Mediterranean. And similarly, India and Europe have been talking about an alternative land-sea route. So these will be more inefficient than the existing Suez route, but since the best has become the worst, they're talking of these alternatives. So ultimately, when we say that we are moving towards higher efficiency, it is always one step forward and one step backwards. China continues to be a great unknown in the area of energy security. It's the biggest importer and biggest exporter of alternative technologies. And if, Kanan Saab said yesterday, there is a small probability that China will take over Taiwan. If it does, then the entire 9-dash line, which covers virtually the entire South China Sea, and which is very rich in hydrocarbons, it will become China's property. And China will perhaps become self-sufficient in hydrocarbons, And if China becomes self-sufficient in hydrocarbons, you know what will happen to the energy market.
I've not understood. What will happen to energy market? Prices will crash?
I'll have to wear that. I have a hearing.
What will happen to, in case China becomes self-sufficient? The demand will disappear, no?
Just please hold on for a
Okay.
minute. Because there I can hear, but sitting here I cannot hear.
If China becomes self-sufficient, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Gets garbled on this side. There I can hear. I have a very serious problem in my ears. Can I come there and...
No. The question is, if China becomes self-sufficient, the demand in the international oil market will crash. The prices of oil will go down. It will work against the alternative. So, renewable energy, fantastic. Okay.
Now, given that China is the biggest producer of solar panels and wind turbines, why is China adding coal power at a very, very feverish pace? Last year, China added coal power more than the rest of the world. They have been giving approvals at 2 plants per week. 2 plants per week are being approved by China. Now, we all know these are infirm powers. These greens are infirm powers. The only really firm power is coal and nuclear. None of the rest is firm. And China wants to keep itself safe. Tomorrow the world will put a total ban on putting new coal power. China will have its backup. It will not have a problem. Those who do not, they will have a problem. Now we all know what is a nuclear winter. Long ago, a meteorite hit the earth and all the dinosaurs vanished because there was no sun for so many years. And if there is a generalized nuclear war, we'll have a nuclear winter of the same order. Sun may not come out for maybe 10 years. There'll be no sun. So solar goes, wind comes from sun. It's the temperature difference which causes the wind. There is no sun, there is no wind. Wind also goes. What will you be left with? If anything would...
Can we all hear properly?
on this side, there is a problem.
Yes,
That
Ashok,
side is
we
clear.
hear properly. We are very worried about
There's
the
some orientation of speakers that we can hear on that side, but can't hear on this side.
nuclear winter. We are worried about nuclear winter.
So, when there will be no solar, no wind, only countries which have coal and nuclear could take care of themselves. The rest will freeze to death. They'll become dinosaurs. So, one big player in this whole question of transition is the activist. Now, the big advantage of an activist is that he or she does not need an education. You can be totally uneducated and be an activist. And you have no responsibility. Activist has no responsibility. He doesn't take decisions. He forces others to take decisions, and those who take decisions are responsible. Now, Greta Thunberg cut off her schooling and addressed the United Nations General Assembly. She did not complete even her school, and she became very celebrated as an activist. And she thumped the table in the General Assembly and said, "How dare you?" Now, this is very easy, because you're devoid of any responsibility. Whatever happens because of your activism, you are not responsible. It is those who implement, they are responsible. All jholewalas you see around, they wear a kurta, put a jhola on your shoulder, and you are an activist. And people will listen to you, funding will come to you. And this funding, mind you, comes from rivals of a nation. Lot of activism in America is supported by China to put spokes in the wheel. When Biden says, I will not approve any pipeline, China is very happy because America had become so dominant a power in hydrocarbons that it was to the discomfort of China. So I think nations have to listen to these activists, but they should take their decisions based on geopolitical reality. Blindly following these activists and their agenda will be very detrimental to the nation. China does not follow these activists. It does what it thinks is in its national interest. We do follow to some extent, and we have to be careful. And you have seen when Ukraine war started, Germany was shouting from rooftops before that, we have closed our thermal plants, we have closed our nuclear plants, we will be a green country. And when the war started, they restarted their coal plants, they restarted their nuclear plants. So if you have coal plants and nuclear plants, you will restart them. If, like China is creating an inventory of coal plants now. So it's good that Government of India has said that we'll have one nuclear plant every year. Ultimately, the only energy which does not come from the sun, coal also comes from the sun. Someday it was a plant and got buried and became coal. The only energy which does not come from the sun is nuclear energy. And that is the energy which does not produce greenhouse gases. That is one energy where no greenhouse gases are involved. And that is one energy which is being demonized by activists. So I would say for India, let's forget about the activists. Those of us who have been in administration, we know that governance is not a science. Science is exact. Science is very exact. It's very predictable. You do an experiment, you know what will happen at the end of the experiment. But administration is an art. And art is different with every artist. It is the personal input of the artist which matters. And so every administrator has his own style of working. But one guiding principle for all administrators is that you have to be practical. You cannot be ideal. Idealism is a good guide, but not a good course of action. So India and China should keep up their coal and nuclear resources. Nehru made us believe about Panchsheel when everybody was warning that China will attack us. He did not believe them, and in 1962 we lost 40,000 square kilometers to China. Let zero goal, zero emission goal, not become another ideal which will ruin India. Thank you.
Mr. Prasher, Mr. Prasher. Yeah, I'm here. I'm behind you. I'm behind you. I have a question for you. Please. We are discussing geopolitics and energy security. I have a question on geopolitics and security as such, not really energy. So we have many neighboring countries. China is also one of our neighbors. I'm not talking about China. But do you think that India's neighborhood policy, as far as geopolitics is concerned, has it been satisfactory? To my mind, it is not satisfactory. So, now what is your view on that? What is your view? Why we are not satisfied? Why it has not been good? I think he is going to answer that question also. Any other questions, please? No. Now we have Colonel Ajay Singh. No, we have Major General Ashok Kumar Mehta, Mr. Mehta, Major General Mehta. Yeah, please.
Good morning, ladies ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether you can hear me properly, but even if you can't, just enjoy what I am going to say. First of all, I'd like to thank my friend Harry Dhol. Harry Dhol pulls out a rabbit every time. He does new things. And I'm sure in the power sector too, he'll make innovations thinking out of the box. We've just got to watch this grand festival that he has organized here in Belgaum. It's a great tribute to his organizational skills. And I think he competes with our Prime Minister for organizational skills for which Mr. Advani praised Mr. Modi. I was hoping I wasn't going to hear Nehru's name today, at least not in the power sector, but thanks to Mr. Parashar, two names that are taboo, Nehru and the other name China, which the government, the two words the government doesn't speak about, China and Manipur. But that apart, I'm here to speak to you about that question which Ashok Dasgupta asked about whether India's performance in the neighborhood has been satisfactory at par, or is it below par? I shall try to answer that question, but before I do, I'll take the liberty of just going back very briefly on what happened yesterday and two or three issues that were not covered in the very spectacular sessions we had yesterday. I'll try to cover. The first issue that we didn't talk about was the IMEC, one of the casualties of the war in Ukraine, or rather, era of wars. Mr. Modi said this is not an era of war. It is an era of war. And our friend Ajay scintillatingly expressed yesterday. And we've got wars being fought on our eastern flank in Burma, the civil war. There's a near war in Manipur, internally. So it's all wars. And the IMEC, the India, Middle East, Europe, the corridor, which was conceived during the G20, is one of those casualties. And the Greek Prime Minister is coming to Delhi because he wants to make Greece as one of the hubs. And he's coming for the Raisina dialogue on 21st, 23rd February, the annual tamasha that the MEA organizes. And he's coming there. And as some of you know, that the Adanis are involved in a big way in buying ports abroad. And as part of your energy, very crucial energy security ingredient is purchase of ports. He bought off Haifa port a year ago, even while the war in Ukraine was going on, and the young Karan Arani, if you have met him, he's a dynamic chap. And the Adanis, by the way, have also done your first deep sea port in India. I mean, how many of you don't know that India did not have a deep sea port where large tankers could anchor until now, until October last year, and even that is not fully commissioned. And ironically, who commissioned it? Chinese cranes come from Shanghai, and the government of Kerala said we didn't allow Chinese on our soil. They stayed on their ship. So that's the Adani, so the IMEC part. And in fact, India's maritime policy, one of the big holes in that maritime policy is the lack of these deep sea ports. And we have been paying Dubai, Singapore, and Colombo. Colombo is a windfall. All our large tankers go there and then they are transshipped into smaller tankers and then they come into India. That is going to change. And the cost of all that, the Red Sea, yesterday was mentioned, a number of factors. The operations in the Red Sea have brought out the primacy of the Indian Navy. The Indian Navy has carried out 3 rescue missions in the areas that were mentioned yet, the mouth of the Red Sea, Straits of Hormuz, in the Arabian Sea and the larger Indian Ocean region. And that shows the importance of the sea lanes of communication which pass through the Indian Ocean, and that is why the Indian Ocean region importance. The India Energy Week was held in Goa 2 days ago, and I have some very fantastic figures of which will be interesting, that India is going to invest, this is Prime Minister Modi saying, $67 billion in gas, and they want to increase the gas component of your energy mix, oil and energy mix. The gas component is going to go up. And as Ajay mentioned yesterday, that India has the largest refining capacity. And India has been refining Russian oil and making a bonanza from other countries which are ostensibly under sanctions of, or under the pressure of sanctions, not to buy Russian oil. And the last point I want to mention, that India will surpass China in the import of crude oil in the next 7 years, which makes the sea lanes of communication extremely important. As it is, the Chinese have the largest navy, not for nothing. They have the largest navy because they are the largest importers of energy. And the last point is on the India Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, I met obviously I'm sure we are guided by Chatham House rules, Chatham House rules plus. I met the energy minister the other day. We had a long conversation. He's a friend of mine from Sri Lanka days, and he was telling me that he did not know what was India's strategic petroleum reserve. Well, he did not know means I cannot tell you. Translation to that. But what Business Standard quoted 2 days ago is that India has 9.5 days of reserve. And the oil companies have something like 64.5 days. But how much reserve they are keeping, because it costs money. It costs money to keep reserve. So how much actual reserve we have, we don't know. And we have strategic reserve reservoirs on the west coast in places like Visakhapatnam, Kudur, and one other place where we are loaning out to Abu Dhabi these strategic caverns to store their reserve in a safe place. And what the minister actually told me was that in Trincomalee, where we have 100 oil tank reserves, and I was the commander of the Indian peacekeeping forces in Sri Lanka in 87, 87, 88, 90. And I know because I spent my life looking at those tanks and refurbishing those tanks. And if the Sri Lankans actually give us what about 25 at the moment, they give us the balance of the tanks, well, good for us. Now, about what there's one other thing about what Ajay said yesterday about Hamas. If I might take 30 seconds to talk about Hamas, because I have a very deep, close knowledge of what's going on in Israel. I have been attending conferences at the International Counterterrorism Institute in Herzliya for the last 15 years, every year, uninterrupted. And I know a great deal, but this is not the forum for that. But what the Israelis have done to Hamas, or are trying to do Hamas, is something that they used to do every couple of years. This is not the first time they've gone into Gaza. It's the 7th or 8th time they have carried out this operation. And they used to carry out what they call mowing the grass. That's the expression, mowing the grass, giving the Hamas a haircut. In other words, undermining their capabilities, undermining their rocket firing capabilities, undermining their other capabilities, but not destroying or eliminating forever Hamas, which is not possible. And so therefore, what the Hamas has done is brilliant. And what the Israelis actually went through is a catastrophic failure of intelligence. Catastrophic is the word of intelligence, because they live next to you, they are in your pocket, and you made this mistake. Now please, let's talk about the neighborhood, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, but before I talk about the neighborhood, I am reminded of Myra MacDonald. Now Myra MacDonald is a Scottish lady, and Myra MacDonald is 94 years old. I met her 2 years ago, not on energy matters, but on single malt matters. And this erudite lady of 94 years age, I said, how do you keep so fit, my dear Myra? And Myra said, well, when I have fever, I drink schnapps. When I have indigestion, I drink red wine. When I have high BP, I drink scotch. And when I have a loss of appetite, I drink beer. So I said, my dear Myra, when do you drink water? And she said, General, I have never felt that bad. Now, let's go to the troubled neighborhood. In this neighborhood, I want you to picture the set of countries. In the neighborhood, India was a dominant power. When I was in the Ministry of Defense in 1987, and we raised the defense planning staff, India was spending 3.5% of its GDP on defense. The Time magazine on its cover carried the Indian aircraft carrier Vikrant, the original Vikrant. And the government, and we were building an airport, an airfield, a fighter airfield in the Campbell Bay, which is the lowermost island, and the government of Indonesia protested instantly. India was powerful. Your neighbors like power. Your neighbors respect power. But how you use power is the question. Power has to be used not deferentially, but differently, especially with your neighbors, that you don't actually need to use that power. And if you picture the three sets of countries, if you look at the Indian Ocean region, in the Indian Ocean region there are two countries, Maldives and Sri Lanka. They are the most important because they cover your sea lanes of communication. There are two neighbors that are up north, Himalayas, Nepal and Bhutan, because they are contiguous with your enemy number one. Then you have two neighbors that have, with whom you have, they are in your belly. Pakistan, incorrigible, and Bangladesh, regardless of what others might say, treats you as an enemy. And then there's, in your extended neighborhood, is Myanmar and Afghanistan. Now, I am not happy to report that except in Afghanistan and Myanmar, no other country likes you. No other country likes India. And India, by the way, has intervened in every country. 1951, Nepal. 1971, we created Bangladesh. 1987, Sri Lanka. 1988, Maldives. And what else? What is that? So use of military force is not alien to India. Internally also we use power, liberating Goa, Hyderabad, Junagadh. So we've not deferred from using force. Two countries in the neighborhood, we are tied with treaty relations, Nepal and Bhutan. Now, what is the aim of our neighborhood policy? This neighborhood policy was designed in 2008, and the idea was, and by the way, these last two countries, which I mentioned, Maldives and Sri Lanka, are related to our energy security. Directly related to energy security. Nepal, Bhutan. Nepal, Bhutan is the largest reservoir of hydropower. 45,000 megawatts and some 38 or 39,000 megawatts. Exploitable, usable energy resource. And we all know what happened. So the aim of our neighborhood is to be able to influence, have friendly regimes, goodwill of your neighbors, be able to shape outcomes in the neighborhood, like we did in Sri Lanka in 2015. Somebody called, speaking about the family in Sri Lanka. Well, India and the United States got rid of the Rajapaksas in 2015. And when they came back, you know what they did. So that's the aim of the policy. But you also have to remember, we can't go around bullying countries as we tried to do in Nepal. What a mess we made of Maldives. I mean, it's shameful. These are my views. The Prime Minister of your country goes to Lakshadweep to use an inelegant word, finger the Maldivians. And the consequences of that, the anti-India feeling, there was already India out. But the consequences of this, that the president of a country is telling you, stop bullying us. We may be small, but stop bullying us. We did the same thing in Nepal in the blockade. I can cite many other examples. So, when we are shaping the neighborhood, we have to be sensitive to their concerns. So that they are sensitive to our concerns, we have to respect them. We have to pamper them. That's use of power. So, this is where we have faulted grievously, not respecting the dignity, the sovereignty of the country. And what we have failed is to recognize the fact that the Chinese are very much there. Chinese are a neighbor. Chinese are India's neighbor in this troubled neighborhood. And they are deeply ensconced in every country in the neighborhood, whether it is Maldives, whether it is Sri Lanka, whether it is Bangladesh. I was in Bangladesh about a month ago. I was horrified. I got a briefing from my own embassy. And my people are telling me that if there is a free and fair election, the Jamaat is banned, but the BNP will come back to power. And people don't like India. When the Bangladesh army plays its war games, guess who's the enemy? We are the liberators. We lost 1,400 people liberating Bangladesh, and we are the enemy. The same goes for. So in the end, let me say this, that regardless of what people may say, the foreign minister said the other day, oh, we gave 4.5 billion, which is true. 4.5 billion assistance to Sri Lanka when it defaulted on sovereign bonds. First country to default, or the first time, because they had an unelected president, Ranil Wickremesinghe. And if you read an article written by a Tamil in the Hindu, 5 days ago, 6 days ago, he writes a terrific article on Sri Lanka's distress and how countries have helped to pull out Sri Lanka from the economic distress. Not a word about India, because he's a Tamil. We went into Sri Lanka for the rights of Tamils, for their sovereignty and autonomy in the north and the east. We encroached, we set up the blockade in Nepal. Why? Because we wanted the Madhesis to get equal respect, to be treated like the Pahadis, the people from the north. We've forgotten the Tamils. We've forgotten the Madhesis. Nobody talks about Tamils. Nobody talks about Madhesis. But you see, if you have a foreign minister, great guy, but this is true, I know this, that he's not welcome in Kathmandu, because they made him the fall guy when he was foreign secretary in 2015. Sushma Swaraj, foreign minister, sent him to tell the Nepalese government, don't promulgate your constitution. Include this, this, and this. The Nepalese have never forgotten that. Will never forget. So, with all this power, I think the use of power and creation of deterrence has to be done with a certain amount of strength. When it comes to the Chinese, they bully us. उस वक्त हम कुछ नहीं बोलते. Chinese के साथ तो कुछ नहीं बोलते. We are very strong with Pakistan. We are very strong with Maldives. We are very tough with Sri Lankans. You can't do a thing because you are spending 1.4% of your GDP this year. I quoted 3.5. This year and for the last 9 years, this government has spent 1.4% of GDP minus pensions. The Chinese will gallop ahead. They're already 6 times ahead of your economy. The gap will become bigger. So the Chinese will bully you, and you will bully Maldives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very interesting. Colonel Saab, we are running out of time, so we want your intervention on energy security. Yes, sir. As it is, you become a star from yesterday, so everyone admires you on that part.
You know, actually, sir, I was hoping to speak on the neighborhood scan and touch upon how it impinges our energy security, mainly in terms of the connectivity. And I do not really have such a bleak view of what's happening around the neighborhood. Things are good, things are bad. But very briefly, if I could just acquaint you all with the neighborhood what's happening, at least South Asia, Afghanistan, it is not really adversarial to us at all. And the way when the Taliban had come over and we thought they are going to be very anti, it's going to spill over into Kashmir and things like this, that's not happened. Things have actually become quite good with them. Pakistan, it's in turmoil. And today, for us, I would say our greatest interest in Pakistan lies in the connectivity which it provides us for our energy security towards Central Asia. The TAPS pipeline, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India gas pipeline will actually revolutionize energy security for both India and Pakistan. The Pakistanis did not allow it to happen because of their innate hostility to India. Today, let me put it this way, Pakistan does not... Yes, it has really reached nowhere, but it could have been a game changer had it been allowed to take off. And again, the reasons for it not taking off was more psychological and hostility, more than economic. So today, I will look at Pakistan's relevance to India, large, besides the capability. Gentlemen and ladies, they have the capability to cause great mischief even today. We must never take our eye off that ball. But its greatest relevance lies in the connectivity it can still provide and the manner in which trade, energy security, sharing of energy can take place even at this juncture, maybe a decade or so down the line, by a slightly more enlightened leadership on both sides. When we go a little further towards Nepal, sir, you had brought out so nicely the fact that relations between India and Nepal have got spoiled. And the major reason for that is for that horrendous blockade which India had imposed on Nepal when they started to promulgate the new constitution. And why was that done? Because it was the Madeshis, which were the plains people, largely from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, their rights were supposedly not looked into in favor of the hill people of Nepal. What did we do? We imposed a land blockade. We barred all foodstuffs, energy, everything getting into Nepal. In Nepali restaurants, there used to be a blank menu card, and on the top was written the Modi menu, indicating that nothing is available because of Modi's blockade. Ladies and gentlemen, Nepal is a source which, it's a friend, it's a brother, we have so much in common. With it, we can provide the hydroelectric energy itself. If we only make greater inroads in that field, it can help. We're already doing it. We use their natural hydroelectric energy to provide them electricity and purchase the spillover, which is what we are doing it. The potential for that can be tripled if only we go about it correctly. The other thing is the energy security of Nepal itself. and their own connectivity to the land-bound nation. When we did our wonderful shenanigans with them, China, of course, rushed into the fray, and why shouldn't they? They began offering them good loans, they began developing the Kathmandu airport, they began developing the road from Kathmandu towards the Chinese coast. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, that's through which coal, oil, foodstuffs, everything will flow in. That is can you imagine the same road from Kathmandu to Visakhapatnam, oblique Kathmandu to Calcutta? The distance is 1/3. Through that, if you only afford open access to this particular road and the ports, can you imagine the interdependence of both nations and economies? More Nepal, of course, than ours, but ours are larger economy. Can you imagine how energy security for both will be enhanced in so many ways? For that, we have to actually have a more magnanimous attitude. Going even further down to Bangladesh, sir, you got it so correctly. There is, even though Sheikh Hasina has come back into power, and she is very pro-India, which is very good for us, but I too was amazed at the anti-India sentiment that exists there today. There are a lot who view India as a threat. There are a lot who are willing to open themselves up to the Chinese just because of their so-called fear of India's big brotherhood. But again, it is a vital cog in our connectivity towards Southeast Asia and ipso facto our energy security. Go down to Sri Lanka. This is one place where we have played our cards somewhat well, in the sense that the ports of Trincomalee, the oil storage tanks of Trincomalee were recently made available to us to store our oil strategic reserves, or part of them rather. We have also started developing the port of Colombo, and the Adani Group is doing that. And one thing is, because we helped them out in their economic crisis, through shipments of oil tankers going out there, money, foodstuffs, the works. One interesting that's happening is, though China is making inroads there, the fear, like I used the word China's checkbook diplomacy yesterday. The thing is, the fears of China's checkbook diplomacy is becoming apparently clear to all nations who have been the so-called beneficiaries of it. Pakistan, for starters, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and now maybe even Nepal. If we use, our checkbook is not so large, but if we use it wisely, and if we use the reservoir of goodwill wisely, we need our neighbors to provide us that connectivity to ensure our energy security. With the Maldives, we have misplaced our hand very badly. But sir, I think you brought out yesterday itself, it is a temporary phase. Who knows, perhaps in March a new government will take over, and then it will, I won't say really hunky-dory, but it will be a lesson for us that this very vital island in the Indian Ocean has to remain, I would say, brotherly. We have brotherly relations with them so that they are under our influence to some extent, without being overbearing about it. Because this lies along our most vital route of energy security through the Indian Ocean. The most vital route for both India and China. And as far as India and China go, ladies and gentlemen, there is one thing I want to bring out. The overall narrative has been that India and China are enemies. And much of it goes back to the 1962 war. Even if we look back at the history of the war and you understand how it took place, we did wrong in many fields, both politically and militarily. Today, if we analyze that equation dispassionately, I would say India-China relations are more adversarial rather than hostile. There has been one incident of actual violence at Galwan, where lives were lost for the first time after 1967. But when you evaluate that event also, it was more a local level action at battalion level that went out of control. Our rivalry lies in the fact that we are both the largest importers of energy and oil. Our economies require that energy to rise. So that is our greatest field of rivalry. We are all striving for the same limited resource and the same sea and land lines of communication through which it flows from. Ladies and gentlemen, if that can be managed, and I remember one thing I brought out yesterday, the fact that India is going to be a great power is we are on the right course of doing it. It depends on two things. Firstly, we should avoid all-out war for at least 20 years more. The second is we should ensure our energy security, internal and external, for the coming decades.
Thank you.
And so one last point,
Yep.
though we do not have oil reserves of our own, we are so rich in renewable energy, sun, wind, other forms of energy which are cleaner. We are doing the right step by utilizing them. Develop this form of energy, develop our energy security, because within it lies the security of our own nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We are running a little behind schedule, so we'll take one or two questions for the panel. Colonel Saab, I think you better be near a mic. And may I request speakers from the 2, 3, 4. Obviously, you guys are not interested in the next session starting. All right, let's start up with you. What's your question? Mike, hurry up.
Good morning, sir. My question is to...
Please identify yourself.
Yeah, my name is Girish from HESCOM, Hubli. My question is to Major General Saab. Sir, you said you have to pamper your neighbors, and I think we have done everything possible with Bhutan. And we are now in a situation where probably Bhutan and China, they are having an agreement of handing over of the land, and that might create a problem in the Siliguri corridor or in the Chicken Neck area. Is it the right way to pamper the... We should also be assertive in this matter.
Your question's over, let him answer.
Yeah. I was in Thimphu and Bhutan soon after we had intervened at Doklam. We all know that India invoked Clause 2 of the 2007 India-Bhutan Treaty, which is modified from the original 1949 treaty. And Arun Jaitley, God bless him, had said in a seminar that we had to stop the Chinese from building this road towards a place called Jampheri Ridge. Jampheri Ridge is in the salient. This is the Chumbi corridor. And Jampheri Ridge is about halfway through, where the Chinese want to get to, because from there they get an excellent view of the Siliguri corridor. Now the problem is this, as I was saying, that when I was interacting with people in Thimphu and Paru, there were a lot of people very angry about India's intervention. That why did India enter Bhutanese territory? They were also very angry that Bhutan is not being allowed to open, although it trades, it's now surpassed India in trade with China, but it's not being permitted to open diplomatic relations with China. And for the first time ever, the Tandi Dorji, who is the foreign minister of the government that is lost, visited Beijing on that three-step formula to delimit and demarcate the border. And if I might also add here that the territory that the Chinese are willing to give to trade for the 89 square kilometer Doklam Plateau is the territory, Jharkhand area, which is hereditary royal property. It belongs to the Wangchuk dynasty. My own view is that the government has changed, by the way. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister who went through these three steps of border delimitation and they're out. The same thing happened in 2014. The Prime Minister, Thille Dorji, when he started opening up to the Chinese and the elections were held, they lost. That government lost and a new government came. And they forgot about delimitation and demarcation. And then this government, Gandhi Dorji's and Lobsang Chering's government came. So the short of the long is this, that optically, there is a lot of progress that they make to keep the Chinese happy. They're very scared of the Chinese. So are the Nepalese. Very scared. Not scared of Indians, obviously. And so they want to keep them happy. But I do not believe that the Bhutanese will carry out a border delimitation and demarcation independent of India, because they are closely linked at Doklam Plateau. If Doklam Plateau goes away, then there's a direct threat to the security of the Siliguri corridor. And this change of government, you will see that they'll slow down the overtures towards China.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next question, please.
My name is Deepak H.S. from Mescom, Mangalore. Sir, what I understood is the slight shift of foreign policy from non-alignment idea to blockwise has causing a little bit dent on our energy security systems. That's the right thing. Because as far as we go for the reports...
What is your question? Ask your question.
That is causing our energy security problems.
Okay. So is it for Colonel Saab?
Slight shift in foreign policy.
Sir, question is to whom? Colonel Saab?
Both of them.
Yeah.
Because both of them have said that the political angle of that one.
Colonel Saab, over to you. No. Mike.
Fact that our shift from non-alignment to a partial tilt towards the West is causing a change in our energy security. Okay, let me put it this way. Ladies and gentlemen, non-alignment was an idea which has passed its shelf life long ago. And we are doing just the right thing by discarding it. We have, let's be honest about it. The world in those days were in two camps, the US camp, the Soviet camp. Non-alignment movement came that we will not be aligned to either camp. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 91, the entire idea of non-alignment finished off. So obviously we have moved away from it, rightly so. And now we are in a position of strategic autonomy, but leaning towards the West and still maintaining close relations with Russia. And even with China we could have, had things not really gone out of hand. I think this has actually contributed to our energy security rather than if depleted.
Okay.
So I think they're the right step, and it will contribute to energy security in all fields in this particular.
Thank you. A last question, please, because we're running late. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Question, mic for the gentleman here.
My question is to Colonel Ajay Singh. Nepal and Bhutan have huge unexploited hydro potential. In Bhutan, we have been able to exploit a few projects, but not to the extent what we could have done. So where we have erred in exploiting the potential,
can I just
and
add?
what more is required to be done? And similarly, to Sri Lanka also, we have been talking of the interconnection for the last 40 years. And
You're talking about the wire, undersea cable connecting Tamil Nadu?
Yeah. Okay. And Sri Lanka is burning huge fuel oil at a very high cost. Why we have not been able to succeed in that?
Before
What
you,
more is required to be done with these neighbors to exploit the hydro potential in Nepal and Bhutan, which will help us in our energy transition in future, and also establishing interconnection with Sri Lanka.
Karasa, before you answer, let me add my two-penny bit on this. You may be aware, since you've been in a position of power sector as captain, that there are various hydro projects in Nepal which are funded by the Chinese. But Government of India, MEA, does not allow them to sell power on the exchange because they're funded by China. I think it is the most silly thing to do because I'm looking at it from a commercial point of view. If the Chinese are funding Nepal to set up a power station, I'm getting the benefit of that hydropower. I don't see anything wrong with it. But there's a disconnect somewhere where commercial considerations, market considerations are not being considered. In fact, there is some geopolitics here saying that any project in Nepal which we identify is funded partly also by the Chinese, they will not be allowed to come on the power exchange. Go ahead, sir.
The reason for this is not hard-nosed economic facts, but political compulsions. Remember what I said to you. Nepal and Bhutan are so rich in hydroelectric resources, we can triple the amount of investments we have. Triple is at a modest yardstick. But there are two things. One is the political will to expedite it is not as strong as it should. The other thing is a slow pace of infrastructure work. When the Chinese take on a project, they finish it in 1/3 the time which we take. Had that been, we understand the potential, but we have not exploited it fully. That is the reason for our slow pace in all these three nations and in other ways.
But our private sector is capable of expediting the project. Maybe in the government sector.
Sir, you will be aware that though the private sector can do marvels, but the process of getting approvals has to follow that same bureaucratic red tape, which I'm sure many of you have experienced.
Yeah, let me unilaterally add to what Ajay has said. Now, in Nepal, the power resources were controlled directly by the palace, the king, because there's money there. And the exploitable, Nepal has just reached the stage where it can export. It is now exporting something like 235 or 300 megawatts to India, only in the winter season. The figure is 780. Now, I was in a conference in Kathmandu where a delegation from Bhutan had gone to Kathmandu, some power conference or whatever, and the Nepalese delegate asked the Bhutanese that how come, because they were in South Asia at that time, they were the highest GDP because of the sale of power to India. All their power is sold to India. And the Bhutanese minister told the Nepalese minister, sir, we do not mix politics with water. And in the case of Nepal, we know this, that I think this is a point that is made by many Nepalese about India having put an embargo on sale of any project, Chinese-funded project, sale to India. I think they haven't thought this through. But what the Nepalese are going to be able to do now in the short term is the latest agreement. They have been allowed 10,000 megawatts in the next 10 years. Now there's a lot of queries and questions on the sale of this power to India within Nepal. But ultimately, the prosperity of Nepal and Bhutan is contingent upon that, and the prosperity of the rest of South Asia. South Asia power grid can be developed enormously. In fact, there's an agreement last time, a couple of months ago, with Sri Lanka also about power export to Sri Lanka. So, I mean, there is sky is the limit, as Prime Minister Modi said, about
Thank you,
your
sir.
power capability.
Thank you, sir. May I request the next panel speakers to join us, since we are way behind schedule. We are running Indian Standard Time. May I request Mr. Chintan Shah to join us, Mr. Ajay Pratap, founder of Switch Labs, Vivek Sharma ji, Energy Strategy, Adani Group, Mr. Sanjay Jog, who's a journalist, and of course Samir Khirpurikar, Manager, Regulatory and Policy, India Energy Storage Alliance. Welcome, everybody. Chintan, you're going to go in the lead this one, since I have a throat problem. So I am doing Mon Vrat. Hi, come, please come. So I'm going to hand over the program to you, and you can get everyone going. Your name is on the other side of the page. Mike also.
Thank you, Harry. Session is supposed to talk about and debate about the net zero mission, the scaling renewable and storage. We all know that we have a massive target, one is the near-term target of 500 gigawatt of renewables by 2030. And there's a larger target of going net zero. And a host of activities happening around it. And one thing is for sure, there's more and more penetration of renewables. Yeah, there's going to be more and more penetration of renewables, wind, solar, hydro and all. And obviously, the entire planning has to take into account of this variability. That means you need to add a huge amount of balancing power, storage, and things like that. So a lot of activities are happening right now. We're talking about central utility storages. We're talking about distributed storages, embedded generation also. For example, the recently announced scheme by the Prime Minister of India of 1 crore residential rooftop. Actually, it's about embedded generation. So whole distribution planning is also going to change in the future, because you'll be generating electricity at the doorstep of the consumer. Almost a lot of investment that might be going for the future in distribution systems would also get augmented. There have been new technologies on the storage side. The most robust has been now is pumped hydro. Everybody knows about it. But then you have entire battery storages coming up, both at utility level as well as at distribution level. And now they have a new concept called gravity storage, where essentially you have the abandoned mines, coal mines, metal mines, which can be utilized to have a gravity storage. So a lot of things are happening across the world, and the good part is India is today the most well-connected country in terms of getting the technology in place and utilizing it. I had a stint with financing the last 5 years, so I can assure you one thing, capital is a non-issue today. Be it debt, be it equity. There's a huge amount of equity available globally to be put to India. At the same time, a fair amount of debt available, with domestic as well as international. So I don't think capital, which was a challenge a couple of years back, is today. No, that's not the case. The major challenge lies with execution, implementation, and deployment of money. And execution has got its own set of challenges. And because this entire sector is so dynamic, things change very fast. The plannings also change very fast. We have to be very, very agile. There have been a lot of game-changing ideas coming up and all. So this is again important. The planning also has to be fair amount of flexible in nature to adapt all these technologies or innovations that's happening across the world. We have a panel, and what I would do is I have Vivek Sharma with me from Adani, and he is in the strategic group there at a group level. And Adani is obviously practically into everything nowadays, be it generation, be it transmission, be it distribution, and also getting into maybe storages also. So maybe he can have his view, can give your view about it, what the challenges are, and what do you think should be the way forward in the future.
Thanks, Chintan. Thanks, Harry. So I thought in terms of flow, the previous session was quite interesting. So I'll start my I thought I'll just give a global perspective, and of course it dovetails with the entire net zero commitment. But this is quite interesting slide, I call it. We've been updating this regularly, and I find this the most interesting in terms of some of the facts which people may know, but still putting things in perspective. That both in terms of the per capita or per capita income, or for that matter per capita electricity consumption, you can see we in the lowest side of the graph, of the bar. The message, key message here I'm trying to give, if you compare ourselves with China, we've been talking about China a lot. Just look at their per capita, which is almost 6 times, I think, last session somebody mentioned that. And the power behaves almost similarly. The power also is almost 5 to 6 times. Even countries like Vietnam, you would see they are ahead in terms of us, in terms of per capita. Other, I think, key message, if you look at the population pure, China and India, others are less population. So clear message here is that in terms of growth potential is huge for the country. I think that we need to all accept the fact that India has to grow and grow manifold. And there is a room to grow because we have a population which is high, our per capita income is low. So the growth has a clear bearing, or the electricity has a clear bearing on the growth part.
So
I just want to
I want to ask you this because very important slide. India running at 1,255 kWh per GDP. What you are saying in this slide is that we in India are going to see an increase of twice or thrice.
So the Niti Aayog or other government of India is saying we should be 4,000 by 2030, which would mean somewhere closer to Vietnam, per capita wise we should be almost double electricity consumption. So electricity need to go up significantly to meet that.
But what electricity? That's my question.
4,000.
No. Koila, ya renewable, या क्या?
That I'll come later.
Thank you.
So coal is required, I think the government also acknowledges. $4,000. No, per capita GDP. Consumption, I would say 2,500 around 2,400. It should be doubled to meet that. Unless we have some. I'll come to that. You know, there's this, end of the day you can do that maths. In our population is growing less. Okay. Now, coming to the net zero before the commitment we made, even in terms of per capita emissions, we are the lowest. And I think there's something we have been talking in COP28 and all various forums that, you know, we are at the lowest one, so it's not that holier than cow West becomes and says that, you know, you guys should clean up your mess, but they have a lot to do there, that side. Having said that, it's not that we are not committed. So in terms of our commitment, on the right side, we are clear that we'll reduce our GDP intensity by 45%. That's an important point. So any new GDP which is added over the years by 30, if I use right now 100, I'll use 55. That's the commitment, which is a huge commitment, and we are on that direction in terms of achieving that. In fact, there is a view that we'll achieve before 2030. The left one is a little more interesting to put the perspective that net zero is taken seriously in many countries. If you see, except 47 countries out of 200, so 3/3 or 75% of the countries have committed that they will achieve, get to net zero. That's a separate thing. Somebody has pledged, somebody is in the policy document, somebody has made a law. So there is a different basket all countries are doing. In India, we have pledged and we have also policy document to support it. So we have done two things. Policy in terms of the RE trajectory or, you know, RCO, renewable consumption obligation, or for that matter, the carbon market, the way they are going to define the carbon intensity target. So we have a policy support, some by law, some pledge, so some mix of that. Companies, quite interesting, all the global companies that are listed companies who has submitted their sustainability report, around 2,000 odd. So they're also, half of them, more than half of them are towards achieving net zero, which means that whatever they are producing, they will try to produce that, reduce their scope 1 and scope 2 by buying green power or do other activities within their business in terms of process to bring down the overall cost efficiency. Having said that, I think let's again coming back to the more realistic India scenario, we are a growing economy, electricity demand is growing. COVID was a period where you know, things were stagnant or was almost down for 1 year, 2021. We never thought it will be growing that rapidly in next 2 years. So people initially said, no, it's a pent-up demand, it'll go over, it'll come down. No, it's not a pent-up demand. I'll come to that why it is not pent-up demand, it is going to grow more. Pent-up demand story was there for few months in 2022, whether it is diesel, oil, crude also, certain consumption went up in petrol pumps to match it. But after that, this is all incremental. These are all incremental growth which has happened in last 1 year especially. This year as we speak, I think the estimate is we are already crossing 1600, FY24. So again, a 10%, 9% growth happening last 1 year. And all the key 7 states are growing, largely driven by a lot of effect of PLI scheme and of course urbanization, the second one. Having said that, what we have missed out in supply is our supply pace has been lower than the demand. Especially not only thermal. Thermal, I think the thermal addition, people are not talking 1 or 2 years ago, for last 5 years or 4 years, to that extent that BHAL and other has shelved their plan that we will not do coal-based thing anymore. It went to that extent to completely focus on the renewable side, rightly so, but thermal took a backstage and back burner. In fact, most of the employees who were getting passed out from various colleges just wanted to go to RE. They never thought, you know, we need to go to thermal. And today, therefore, there's a dearth of talent for thermal, which was conventional way of running power sector. But even in last 2 years, even though RE capacities have gone up, there is a concern in that capacity addition because there were a lot of issues we faced in last 3 years in terms of the required capacity addition. And this is something I mentioned, why the RE pace was not as we desired, even though, again, I'm saying it's many times more than what we used to do more, but the expectation was more. So clearly, if I look at, just to give you a number, it's not mentioned here, but we did this tender analysis. Out of close to 200 tender announced, only 48 gigawatt got commissioned. Some of that got not subscribed, some of them where DISCOM has not signed, some of them was not viable, or they took a bait of, they're under construction, they're saying, let the module price come down, let the BCD issue come down. So some of the, I would say, stumbling block in terms of why the capacity has not happened, one was, of course, BCD, which was more rightly to protect the domestic manufacturing or promote the domestic manufacturing. DISCOM, I think Chintan mentioned that the concern for the grid will remain with them, and we have to be mindful when we thought of any solution to give to them that going forward maybe it will be more RERTC or FDR, which they have recently announced, than doing only pure solar. Grid management and to land and transmission, of course, transmission is to catch up. And as in next 2 years, our worry, in fact, is also that transmission need to, take quite a different pace to get those targets. And last, but also the RPO compliance has been very poor. Rather, it has not been adopted, and there's just a slide, not want to clutter you with numbers, but the RPO compliance is far short of the target. One, the target which is given by the national government through the policy, then the state SERC adopted, which was lesser version of that, and the actuals were also less. So lately, I think we are also including hydro to meet that. Even after including the hydro, our targets will be less short than the new trajectory which has been defined. Yes. Now, in terms of growth, I think then we can talk of some of the challenges and mitigation for doing net zero. I think one important point is that the growth-wise, there's now two views that India will grow, and the power requirement of 6.5% is realistic. Even though what I heard, CA is revising this upward, considering that FY24 itself will be more than what they have originally envisaged. So the base will increase, the numbers may go up. So if it is 1650 in FY24, the trajectory will also move up. The reasons is that, a lot of traction is happening because of PLI manufacturing on ground. The appliance penetration, urbanization has significant uptake. So that has also led to the increased demand. This demand, by the way, talks about the grid demand. It's not talking about the demand which will be there from generation perspective for the hydrogen, because mostly we assume that will be captive. So to meet now this demand, the concern is how should we do it? So originally the thought was that from existing 220, to answer Mr. Dhol's point, 220 gigawatt of thermal will go up to 252, which means 30 gigawatt added to meet that demand. But that 30 itself was looking challenging because the under construction projects are all delayed and the new one are not there. So 252 itself is a challenge, but now what minister says that we should have at least 260 to 270 gigawatt of thermal to meet that demand, which I think is a challenge. And I have a worry that if we don't do thermal also and we fell short of RE, we will be facing deficit in this country. Just to give perspective on this slide, that if I have to achieve, we have to achieve as India the target envisaged by 2030, that 500 gigawatt, which is 450 actually if I net off nuclear. We need a run rate of solar of 35 to 36 gigawatt a year. We have done the best 10 till now. 10 on the right side. So 10, 12 max, in case. So this is almost 3 times the requirement run rate. And wind, of course, will be very conservative on wind, considering, even though that's the most important component for providing a reliable solution. is missing the target, missing the numbers.
Normally, now there is always an error in solar. When you say gigawatt, it's AC.
Yeah,
But actually, if you take DC, it's not 74 gigawatt. It's close to 95 gigawatt. And if it's 10 gigawatt here, it's close to 14 gigawatt.
yeah, correct.
So what you're showing is AC, but actually deployment in
Is
megawatts is much higher.
Correct, correct. Yes, that's right, yeah. I, from a perspective of meeting requirement, I converted that, yeah. So I think the message here is that we need to do a lot in terms of capacity addition besides thermal on the RE side also, and some of the points which we need to address. There was one more thought I think that I'll just don't want to clutter and will pause for some time. The view is that even if I have to do those 450 gigawatt and I do the thermal the way I'm talking right now, or lesser capacity addition, I will have a peculiar problem in this country where we'll have a surplus in the afternoon. That is what this curve is trying to show. That even though adding 300 close to gigawatt of solar, which I think even realistically speaking, we will not be able to achieve those numbers. But if we achieve hypothetically, if I have to do the modeling with the assuming a load curve shifting also to an extent in the morning, we will be having a surplus. So the solution for the grid, maybe, we need to have somewhere balance where we need to have more base load addition than only this. That is one. And second, for solar alone story may not fortify if we don't have the storage capacity. So solar with storage will be critical because we are not very optimistic how much wind we'll add, but solar plus storage will be critical to manage the grid if I have to really stay away from thermal or maybe have lesser inclination towards thermal. Otherwise, the simple solution could have been the thermal itself. So the RERTC or 24/7 solution provision will be important, and therefore the storage, managing the grid will become critical. I think this was mentioned by Chintan in the opening remark that the concern over the grid management, and if you go in ground, DISCOM rightly so also have a concern. One is the variable nature. Then they think there is a large underutilized thermal capacity in terms of they are paying the fixed charge, but they are buying, they are doing that flexible operation, which you call will bring down to 40%. By the way, I took flexible operation, then also there is a surplus in the previous slide. Then overall, they think that, they need what the potential solution they're looking at. They're looking if we can shift the load. So agriculture, I think some states are trying. They have done it. There's still room to do more. As a country, I think we should promote load shifting, whether it is through time of day, but also maybe making mandatory some of the things. And I do see this smart meters and other things will provide that handle. When we come to AI part session, we'll talk about that, how we can manage the load requirement of a consumer. Whether it is, say, washing machine, dishwasher, whatever the appliances, which we can shift in the morning hours will be important as we move along. Maybe right now, everything is in deficit, but I'm predicting if we really have to go to a solar addition, ramp up that capacity, we need to also in parallelly incentivize or make it mandatory some of the load shifting which should happen in the states to the morning hours. And of course, for flexibility, we need PSP, hydro and gas, and storage. I'll talk about a little bit on storage. Thermal technical, I think by and large, for achieving the overall target, thermal have their by and large, now the CA also come up with the notification, CRC has come up with a draft regulation on flexible operations in terms of their cost and how they will address that same in terms of the pass-through. So thermal stations are by and large geared up to do 40%, but still that will be lesser as we move along. This is, I think everybody knows, a duck curve which is normally shown in many places, which is taken from California grid, where we say it teaches a duck to fly when the sun is not shining. So, yeah, chemicals. So, everybody is talking about different curves, but it's all in there in the afternoon. So it will be other way around. So I think this is something in terms of any solution for power, and I think in some, he's not here, he mentioned in COP that when you call RERTC and we talk about good about India, he was very careful of the fact, and he gave the example, let's be real, if 3 days or 4 days of rain, sun is not there, how you will give me power? Power systems are not, work like this. So you need to really have very strong, reliable solution. He was saying, can we have a 48 hours battery, 72 hours, how much core capacity you will add? Maybe that's extreme right view, but there is a merit in that discussion that we need to really find a solution both from the demand side and from the supply side. Demand side, as I mentioned, load shifting, time of day, load shifting, like mandatory load shifting, and on the supply side, how much we can have PSP or storage. So this is something again, CA has talked that they will have pump storage of 14 gigawatt. Just to tell from Adani perspective, we are committed to do 6 gigawatt in next 3 to 5 years. 1000 megawatt is already under construction. So we are pretty much there, and we also think this is essential component going to be as we move ahead to meet the requirements, especially considering solar hours and evening peaks, which we are right now witnessing in the exchange also almost consistently 10 rupees to 8 rupees during the peak hours. On the storage, CA did mention that they will do 24 gigawatt, even though gigawatt here doesn't make sense, gigawatt hour, 4 hours if you zoom. But the critical aspect in this is that we are a price sensitive economy. The cost curves of battery, even government is watching till it gets its full deployment at the scale it's required. There is a view, and most of the secondary view is that the cost will come down. And if I have to see their prediction in terms of the addition, they say there will be hockey stick kind of a thing. After 28, battery will get adopted more, because by the time you can get a full battery pack at $100 less, which would mean that 6 to 7 rupees battery in the evening, which is currently at 10 to 11, and most of the tenders on the battery which has come, it's come in the same range. So this is closely watched space. I also think in terms of practical, technical understanding is still there missing in terms of on ground, because this will require land, this will require safeguard issues to be handled. The stationary and scale, how much they can do, even though India, China and US are able to do, how much we are able to do is something we need to see. Even if 24 we do it, I think it will be a good number to look at in 2030. Compliance, I did mention.
What is battery going to be treated as? Generating, transmission, distribution, consumer, or what?
It's a very important question, good question. Let me tell, in China it is considered a transmission asset. We did some internal exercise to show to the board, and there was a concern how China is growing, why China is growing. So some of this discussion happened. In many countries, they're defined in transmission asset. In India, we were saying that it should not be considered as consumer or distribution oblique. Moment you do that, by default, lot of regulation and lot of charges comes into play. For example, electricity duty as a consumer and all that. That will be double counting. I think even though the government has given clarity that input energy to charge that will not be charged, but right now it is generation to an extent when it delivers power to the end consumer. So round trip करने के बाद जो consumer को जाता है, that is considered generation. It's a set right now sitting with the distribution end. Right now. But the critical part is that globally it is by and large called transmission assets, is supporting the ancillary or the grid. You take the excess power, peak supply or excess, and give it to a transmission asset and use it for the grid management in the evening. Normally it is like that. So the similar will be here in this case of India in terms of usage.
So, as far as storage is concerned, you'll have two types of storages. One is, I would say, large-scale storage like PSP, and you have to be on the transmission grid, either STU or CTU. And then you'll have an embedded storage within the distribution grid. near the substation, 2 megawatt storage, 3 megawatt storage, because you'll have so many now. If I assume if this 1 crore roofs are going to be solarized, they're going to generate electrons in the afternoon. And that's going to be a massive surplus, which will also trigger a market for embedded storage at the distribution end, because there is electricity available, not getting consumed. So obviously you can't go upstream, rather put a storage there, because you also know in the evening the consumption will be higher. Now, that storage cannot be a part of the same storage. I mean, you have two separate type of regulations, I would say. One is a centralized storage, another an embedded storage. I think this is something which is going to happen in the future. And also, for an embedded storage, and you are going to essentially get electrons at 440 volts, there are no metering regulations for that today, because nobody's envisaged that. So all these things have to be in place. I think the latest is KERC has brought out a draft regulation on peer-to-peer for residential rooftop. So that is something which is going to be interesting to look into. Delhi is going to announce same peer-to-peer. So that means you're going to do sort of a settlement at 440 volts or maybe 415 volts, what the case may be.
May I just add to the confusion, since my job is to create confusion, right? Dr. Deo sitting here, he would recall we took a whole 5 or 6 regulators, including CRC, to America, and to FERC in the United States, Washington. And the head of FERC that time said, I'm going to use electric vehicles as storage devices. Okay?
Sorry.
So just adding to his decentralized storage, I just wanted your comments, because you're looking at strategy.
So you said electric vehicle.
Electric vehicles को वो storage में use कर रहा है, because he wants to use the electric vehicles where you charge them and you discharge them when he wants.
No, that's very much possible. So if we have battery swapping, entire battery fleet of swap, say in a petrol pump there is a battery, I'm just envisaging, is there in US. There's a batteries lying, so battery that could be charged in the sun time. They'll be charged at that time and people can pick when they want. That's one solution. Second, even in India, our ATGL, which is gas entity, they are putting up charging station of 25,000, they have a target. There they are thinking is they will charge, promote charging in the daytime for the batteries, for the vehicles to charge. And they are giving incentives clearly which is differential in nature. Say it will be almost 1/4 or 1/3 of the price which they have to pay otherwise if they charge in the PM. So they are thinking on that direction. So idea is to utilize excess power in the form directly adding to that battery which is for the vehicle EV, or the charging the vehicle directly, both cases. So what you are saying is right. This is not, in fact, there will be increased demand because of EV, and in Mumbai, again, EML, our entity, there also our thought process is that we will promote charging in the daytime. The challenge will be for buses, road transport, because they fly at that time. They can't wait to get charged. They will prefer to get charged in the night. So those issues are there, but for the consumer or the offices, we are recommending that if you park it at 10 or 9:30, after 10 you can charge. So there is a rota system we are planning, at least in our offices, to start with.
Sounds good. But once you figure out under the Electricity Act what is a charging station, do let me know.
No, it is not mentioned, right?
I know, but my lawyer friends will be very happy that they can start all kinds of litigation, make money, but we need to figure it out. Because the concept was that you use renewable energy and you have a utility scale storage. So there's an exemption. Then from there to McDonald's or KFC, where you have parked your car to have your hamburger while your car is being charged, how the regulator is going to treat the tariff? Is it open access? It is consumer? If it's consumer, the car charging will attract additional surcharge, all of that exciting stuff. So, thanks.
Yeah. This, I think, last 1 year, 2 years, in fact, the work is going in the ministry. The concern was that RPO, as I mentioned in the previous slide, RPO targets are not adopted and they're not implemented. The compliance is not that serious. Of course, one reason which Chintan mentioned was to promote embedded generation. But through the Conservation Act, they've tried to make it watertight in terms of putting those targets. And this is a target for decentralized embedded generation. There is a target for solar, and wind is fungible. So now these steep targets along with defined penalty will be something to watch for. I know that it may not be implemented completely till the point in the Act 86 also section empowers, but these are two things will go in parallel. But this will be directly going to the consumer, this particular thing. SCRC role will be there when the penalty will get petitioned. But I think this is something we need to closely watch how things go, because that will be critical as for the country, how the DISCOMs are able to buy RE, including the fact that a lot of SECI concern is that PPA DISCOMs are not signing. Even though we need to find the solution why they are not signing, but I think this is trying to push that thing that if tenders of 10 gigawatt to 12 gigawatt every quarter is going to come, DISCOMs are ready to sign it considering the targets which are here. Rest, I think I will not spend time, but on the land side is not much, but on the transmission side, I think it's critical for our key states, regions where the maximum generation is coming up, Rajasthan and Gujarat. The transmission has to catch up significantly, even though it is there mentioned in various documents, but on ground, both in terms of capacity and also the tenders rollout is still slow as compared to the capacity envisaged which is going to come. I think that's it from my side. I don't know, there was one slide on China, but I will just mention China-India context in terms of grid before I leave. China demand we mentioned is 5 to 6 times, electricity is 5 to 6 times. Thermal is almost similar. We are at 220, they are at around close to 1000 plus 1100. What is advantage they have is they have wind which is 10x. They have hydro which is 8x than us. So from the grid stability, their key thing which they have is hydro and wind. Plus they have 130, 140 gigawatt of solar rooftops, which we also hope to do. So these three things which are very differential, other things are almost similar 5 times, except these three which are taking things away from us. And they define, as I said, transmission, PSP battery as transmission, and they are 140, 150 gigawatt of pipeline right under construction of PSP and battery storage as a transmission asset. So these, they are planning wise, they are managing things better. Also they are endowed in terms of natural resources. Wind I just mentioned, they have offshore also, onshore. It's like almost 10x, 10 to 11x than our capacity. Hydro also, they are having a world largest hydro plant they're going to put up. So that will help them to do the balancing power. And coal, they are still adding. Last year they added 72 gigawatt of thermal coal, 72 gigawatt of thermal coal, just 1 year. Net is 58, they retired 14. RE solar, they added 200 gigawatt. 100 gigawatt they added wind. So 300 gigawatt RE in 1 year. 70 gigawatt of thermal. See the kind of implementation they are doing. It's unbelievable. And I showed our number, which is like, we are still saying 16 bhi ho jaye, 16 gigawatt in an year combined, wind, solar will be a big thing. They are doing 300 gigawatt in an year. So that's it, thanks.
Thank you, Vivek. I think China is not a democracy, so they can do anything they want. We are trying to do things in a democratic setup, so I think it's not comparable. China can do whatever it wants, and a lot of things doesn't come out from China, which we don't know. But 3-4 things that is coming to my mind, essentially till 2030, which is, I think, little bit not very, very clear in terms of planning. I did a whole calculation, only the manufacturing industries coming up under PLI in India are going to create a base demand of 60 to 70 gigawatt. Their vendors will also come. They'll add another 30 gigawatt. So 100 gigawatt is the PLI based base demand going to come up by 2028, 20, come for sure. Now there are non-PLI manufacturing also. That will another add 30 to 40 gigawatt. So we are talking about at least 140 gigawatt of base demand, new base demand by 2030. Apart from the density of consumption going up by every consumer in India, because essentially there's a more purchasing power. People have been installing gadgets and all, so we're consuming more. So there's going to be a massive demand. Third most important disruptor, which is going to happen, is hydrogen. Now, hydrogen is a load center. Try to understand at the end of the day. You generate renewables somewhere, but you also consume renewables at your electrolyzer. So there is going to be at least 125 to 140 gigawatt of base demand coming from hydrogen only. As a consumer, they will generate their electricity, but they are adding the consumer demand. Because that has to work at 95% efficiency. And two more things which are happening. The residential rooftop is going to add 30 gigawatt embedded. That's a target. 1 crore rooftop, average 3 kilowatt. 30 gigawatt of only embedded generation. And one more segment which is getting added is MSME. There is about 8 million MSMEs in India, of which 2 million MSMEs are into manufacturing. On an average, 2 to 300 kilowatt of load demand they have got. We are talking about a staggered granular demand of something like 30 gigawatt in MSME only. And all these MSMEs are growing. So today 8 million MSME is going to be about something like 16 million 5-7 years down the line. So this is the type of demand which is going to get created at various places. So this is going to be definitely a challenge on the planning side. And also, obviously, there's an opportunity for business also. Let's move to another speaker. Sure.
We have been talking about rooftop solar in various, the urban population in big cities in India. I wanted to, concentrate or give some advice to a friend of mine in Calcutta, where there are 36 flats, and he wanted to, install one. So I did all the calculation. I said how it will be done and where it should be done. There should not be any problem for them to have a walk in the roof also, keeping those aside. Finally, the question which he asked me, Ashok, what is the payback period? The payback period was some 5 or 6 years. He said, I'm not interested. Now, my question is that we will have to go ahead and have more and more rooftop solar in all the urban population of India and later on to other places also. What are the problems faced by rooftop solar, installation of rooftop solar, and how it can be solved? Does the state regulatory agency have to give more concession to the people who are going in for it? Because in Europe, you see, there is so much of rooftop solar in almost every houses. India, it is not progressing the way it should. That's my question, how to get it done?
No, the valid question, and in this budget, and the PM has announced this 1 crore solar rooftop mission addresses to large extent this issue. One, they plan to give 60% subsidy. So I'll just give an example. If it is 3 kV installation, it will cost you around 1,50,000. So what they are saying, they'll give you 85 to 90,000 upfront. That leaves you 60 to 65,000 to be paid. And there, the government, the model is working. My sense is they are talking to SBI and a couple of other banks. They will give the rest of the part also as embedded concession for 15 years loan at 7%. It's in discussion. I'm not sure whether it will finally happen. The thought is that when you got the upfront, second, the surplus which will be generated through this will repay that loan. That's the model they're working out. So your concern which is there for West Bengal may not be there after this scheme. And this will be West Bengal specific. Otherwise, if I go to Gujarat, which is one of the highest number of installation, there people say 3 to 4 years is the payback, and they are doing it anyway. But this will really kickstart some of the things which we are lagging. Let's see the final document when it comes. But to me, it looks like this will be certainly a great initiative for this country. It will be win-win for consumer as well as for DISCOM, considering the demand supply constraint also at this stage what we are having. So, no,
just a quick response. DISCOMs are loving this scheme now because you have the culture of freebies have started in India. Free units, 300 units free. So that's obviously a pain to the DISCOM. Now this essentially solves the problem of the DISCOM also. So almost every DISCOM now is in line. It should be done. We move to our next speaker. We're talking about storage and all, but storage Along with storage, the e-vehicles are equally important. And particularly, we are talking about e-vehicles in the urban areas, but there's a whole gamut of e-vehicles for commercial purpose, be it buses, be it trucks. Now, there are a lot of activities happening on there. There are different views on should it be a hydrogen truck or it should be a battery truck. There's a debate going on across the world. India is also experimenting with the technologies. We don't know finally what is going to land. What I'll do is I'll hand it over to Ajay to share his view. He's from the e-business, and we are short of time, so I would say that if we can limit ourselves to about 10, 12 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So, my name is Ajay, and I'm founder of this Switch Lab. So, we are into EV trucking, and we have recently started providing, our services to different hard-to-abate segment industries. So, our target is cement and metal companies for their, short and fixed route operations. So I would like to share one data that in India as of now there are 10 million trucks. Out of them, 2.8 million trucks or around 28 lakh trucks are running on fixed route operation like point A to point B and point B to point A. The trucking segment is just 2% of the total automobile, number-wise just 2% of the total automobile segment in India, but it's responsible for 40% of transport-related emissions. So this is one of the, and obviously our policymakers and everybody has seen how two-wheeler and three-wheeler nowadays, last mile delivery, everybody is talking about EV, two-wheeler and three-wheeler, and we have seen a great progress in that, but trucking segment has been left behind. Even in our neighborhood country like Pakistan have a target of around 90% new trucks, means by 2040, 90% of their trucks will be EV. So this is just a policy-wise. Many of the Scandinavian and European countries have their own target by 2030, and obviously in US also, like they have done a great deal, especially in the state of California. So as of now, there are limited manufacturers available for the EV truck. Ashok Leyland is also coming with their 3 new models. This means like we are commissioning their, we are launching with their model by June this year, and we are already deploying these trucks to some of the companies, including JK Lakshmi Cements will be one of the clients, where we are transporting their clinker from one place to another. It's just 70 kilometers route. If I go to the commercial part a bit, a normal truck, ICE truck runs 7,500 kilometers as an average per month. But if we have to, and since as of now, battery power trucks and means EV trucks are almost 3 times of the cost-wise, 3 times of the normal ICE engine trucks. If you have to make it possible and if you have to run it, profitably, we have to run at least 10,000 kilometers per month. These EV trucks means at least we have to run more than 25% more if we have to, make it a profitable business. And that's how we are choosing only those industries, those routes where we have a 24/7 operations and where we can run these trucks at least 10,000 per month. And by doing so, so there are certain learnings that how ICE engine and normal transport are seeing this business and how we are seeing this business. There is a completely different approach because every 4th or 5th year, what they do, like they usually sell their assets and make it a game of capital. Means like usually they take new assets on loan and they run it for 4 or 5 years. Once the ICE engine performance goes down in 4 or 5 years, they sell it in secondary market, and then secondary market they again run with like some other people run it. In EV, since we don't have a data of salvage value or secondary life, every fourth or fifth year, we have to change the battery. And the only difference between EV truck and ICE trucks are, everything is designed for its lifetime, the chassis and all. These all are designed for its lifetime, say 10, 15 years. Only difference is there is a ICE engine, and here it is battery, powertrain, and motors. So motors again will run for 10, 15 years without any major problem. The only difference will be the battery. So every 4 or 5th year, when I change the battery, it will as good as a new truck. Its performance will be, and we have a clause 80% with the OEM themselves, that when the battery will, their rated capacity will go down below 80%, they will have to change the battery. So even the, these battery will be not good for the mobility segment obviously, but their second line will be more important in BESS, battery energy storage solution, which is obviously will be important as we are putting more and more solar and wind. So it will be important in coming days. So though these, suppose if I am putting for a truck 255 kilowatt hour of battery, but once its performance will go around 230, 210, 80% of this rated capacity, I have to change this battery, but this will be good for storage solution. So yeah, that's how we are doing it, and we have signed 2 contracts as of now. We have done multiple trials, n numbers of trials in ports, cement companies, and we are getting some more contracts of the 6 more contracts from the cement and metal company very soon. So yeah, so that's a little bit about ourselves and how we are, and proudly we can say that we are the only company who are putting in on the third-party model. Adani Ports has also running 300 EV trucks on Mundra and Chennai port. Those trucks are from the BYD. So we are also in touch. We have recently done a trial, and we were almost about to get contract, but that port was acquired by again Adani Ports.
What happens to the carbon credits and the renewable credits? Who gets it? You or the owner?
So sorry, I didn't get your...
Carbon credit milta hai ki nahi milta hai bhai?
Yes, carbon credits are there. So obviously
We are charging from thermal. How do you get carbon credits? So unless you charge from renewables, you create a baseline scenario and verifying that you are not actually displacing the CO2 emissions. But if going to charge your electric vehicle from the grid, it's 70% is brown power, which is a fact. So anyway, one question I wanted to ask you was on the cost economic side. So on a operating cost, what's operating cost for a diesel truck per kilometer, and what it is for the e-vehicles? Just the operating cost, not the fixed cost.
Okay, one thing again, as a recent study, if we consider the life cycle analysis of diesel vehicles, just 1 minute. So diesel vehicles are their emission are around 1400 gram CO2 per
rupees a liter. 1 liter would run for about 4 kilometers. So around 25 rupees is the operating cost, roughly, maybe 30 rupees also for a truck when you're using diesel. What is this cost when you use a e-truck?
So, taking an example of 40-ton truck, 40-ton payload capacity truck, it will consume around 2.5 liters, means their mileage is 2.5 kmpl, kilometer per liter. And by doing an analysis, we are coming around, it will be cost you around 35 to 40 rupees per kilometer, the cost will be. Similarly, if you do the analysis on the same 40-ton payload capacity of EV trucks, the cost will be around 10 to 11 rupees per kilometer. So this is the difference, almost 1/3 to 1/4 of the running cost. Obviously, the capex is almost 3 times. So that's why the more you run it, you will be more profitable. And 10,000 is the sweet spot where you have to run it per month, comparison to 7,500 kilometers of ICE engine truck.
So Basically, 30 rupees is arbitrage, roughly arbitrage per kilometer. I think we'll go to our next speaker. Sanjay ji, मैं आपको last में बोलने वाला because you need to sum up a lot of things. You come from you're part of ISA, and we've been talking about e-vehicles. We're talking about storage solutions, both utility storage as well as embedded storage, and maybe a couple of more storage will come up in the future. And there's a host of questions on the regulatory interface, how it is to be treated, because the moment you have the child, once moment you are defined this particular, either it's a service, it's an ancillary item, what is it at the end of the day? Because there's a host of regulations going to come in place as well as taxation is going to be in place, which may be at times an obstacle for increased implementation of storage solutions, which is needed. There's no doubt about it. So if you can just throw some lights on that.
So my name is Samir Kirpurikar. I am from India Energy Storage Alliance. So India Energy Storage Alliance is a association, a leading association who is working in energy storage, e-mobility and green hydrogen space. So we are having almost 180 plus members from this space. So yeah, so we are like working in between the industry and the government of India, sort of. So I'll have a presentation which is mostly focused on the policies which are supporting the energy storage deployment in India. So as our earlier speakers has already focused on these net zero targets, I'll not much take time on this. So there the most important target, which is we can say a short-term target for India, is bridging a capacity of 500 gigawatt for non-fossil fuel sources. Then it is one of the other target is to get the 50% of India's energy requirement through RE by 2030. Then bringing down the carbon intensity by 45% by 2030, and the long-term goal is to achieve the net zero target by 2070. So this is the current scenario of India's energy capacity mix. So as we can say that 73 gigawatt is around solar capacity which is being installed as on December 23. And wind has been 44 gigawatts, and thermal is 240 gigawatts. So as per MOP, it is being said that around 78 per gigawatt of capacity is under construction for RE, and they are being anticipated that 322 gigawatt will be coming up by 2030-32 with respect to the RE capacities. So recently in the last year, CA has come up with this National Electricity Plan, which specifies some projections with regards to the energy mix. So I'll brief upon these storage targets, where it is said that PSP capacity of 7.4 gigawatt will be required till 2026-27, and base capacity has been considered at 8.68 gigawatts. And whereas to the scenario, if we consider at 30, 31, 32, the base capacity will be required is around 47 gigawatts, and PSP is around 26 gigawatt, which has been considered by CA.
Can I ask you a question? Can you go back one slide? Look at solar, right?
Yes, sir.
3,64,566, right? But this is only for 6 hours, no?
Yes.
तो वो तो डिस्काउंट करो ना भाई. Otherwise, I am very impressed कि 3.5 लाख मेगावाट आ गया है. नहीं आया है.
नहीं है.
So that I think you need to discount that.
So,
na?
yeah, so these are just projections. We can see the implementation at the latter stage of
Okay.
the future. Yeah, so this slide speaks about the energy storage policies which have come up in India till date. So I can say that from 2018, the actual implementation of storage has been begun in this in country from the MNRE wind solar hybrid policies. And thereon, if we consider as the most effective years will be 2022-23, where the MOP has given a legal status to energy storage under section 2 of subsection 50 of Electricity Act.
Which is?
Which is, they have considered as if the storage asset is being used in generation, distribution or transmission, it will be considered as the asset of that ownership only. Means if we use,
I don't understand. Na? थोड़ा सा बुढ़ा हो गया अभी, slow है. So you are setting up, let's say, a generating station, solar.
Yes.
Let us say you are setting it up in Andhra Pradesh or in Karnataka, right? Then what you are doing is you are storing that energy. That energy is going into a utility scale storage complex.
Yes.
That complex is sitting on the energy, and then it is generating that energy whenever it is required, right?
Yes.
So is that a generator? The independent utility scale, what is it?
So if the storage asset is being used in synchronization with the generation assets, say solar PV, so it can be considered as a generation asset.
Very good. So now for the first time in the Electricity Act, a generator can can get power,
Yeah.
okay, for sale. So you have to change the act.
No, actually. So,
No?
yeah, they,
Generators are not allowed to buy power and then sell it, yeah?
yes.
तो change करना पड़ेगा ना?
No, actually the generation power, suppose a solar PV plant is there, if they are having a surplus power, they can store it in the generation
No
storage
issue,
asset.
no issue. I am just saying that an independent storage, the legality of it, जो storage है, that storage is being used as a extra power from a generating station, right? Solar.
Yes.
Now he wants to schedule power to a discom.
Yeah.
So are you saying that he becomes a generator? If he becomes a generator, then a generator under the act cannot buy power and sell it
Yes.
unless they've changed the act. Am I right, guys? All the gurus are sitting here? Yes? Okay, so we have to correct that first.
Yes.
Now the good news is, when he sells the power to through a discom, and the generator is selling to discom, that is fine. Then it goes to, that's what I was saying when he was talking, it goes to a retail chap. For example, everyone has now got RPO obligations, right?
Yes.
So he goes to McDonald's. McDonald's in Bangalore has got now charging stations. So while you go and have your McDonald's hamburger, your car is being charged. How will that transaction be dealt with? In terms of legality, is it a open access customer who is buying it? Or is he a consumer? And how are you going to exempt all the additional surcharge, cross-subsidy surcharge, electricity duty, all of that excitement which is there for open access? You know, we built a very fantastic system to stop open access.
Yes.
I've been fighting with it for 20 years. Right? तो उसका क्या solution निकाला आपने?
Yes. So right now I may not be able to answer on these questions.
Okay, fair enough. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So then in 2023, Government of India come up with a guideline for PSP, where they have given impetus for development of PSPs in the country. And another sort of policy decision which has been taken up for the VGF funding for 4,000 megawatt hour of base, which is we can say a remarkable support for base for in India to promote. So this policy, this slide speaks about the storage policies which are in India, like which we have speak about the legal status to base, the energy storage system, the ESO obligations, and the state policies. And whereas state are coming up with their respective renewable energy policies, including for energy storage targets, where I can say that recently Rajasthan has come up with a policy which has set up a 10,000 megawatt of target capacity for hydro, PSP, and base capacity in the state. So, what role base can play in this is like a renewable energy integration, which mitigates the variability of renewable sources. Then peak shaving we can say, and ancillary services we can say that it can be can play a level playing field in providing ancillary services. And rooftop plus base storage base option is one of the important, if we can say, in the hilly regions or urban regions where electricity is major problem. and EV application as we are already witnessing in the country.
Can I ask you a question? When you made this policy, did you ask the discoms? Because they lose paying consumer, na?
Yes, rooftop plus.
Unka paying consumer ja raha hai, sir, they'll shoot you.
But sir, if we consider about the hilly regions like in Uttarakhand or side where supplying electricity is a problem, then rooftop plus be.
That's okay, but I'm talking about generally, the Honorable Prime Minister has conceptually said we should have 1 crore rooftops, which is a fantastic idea, we should need. But as it is, discoms are upset that they're not getting the subsidy from the farmers. Now you're putting this free power on top of the distribution, whatever it is, the project. But also, paying consumers will not pay to the discom because he's getting solar power free and he's off the grid. See, it's all right to say my agricultural load is 30%, 40%. Yes. In the short term, I put in $50 billion and remove agriculture from the discom's supply because he's got solar. And in 6 hours, he manages his agricultural operation. What happens to revenue? वो आपने कुछ सोचा है उसके बारे में? बेचारे डिस्कॉम्स का क्या होगा? No?
No.
Okay.
So yeah, so the way forward for development of base will be like setting up at a state level targets such as we have seen in solar PV, and then support in terms of taxes and duties, reduction the taxes and duties on batteries. And one of the critical to maybe, which I think to reduce the cost is developing the local manufacturing for batteries, and maybe amendments and finalization of the final regulatory policies with respect to BESS here, such as VGF for BESS has been announced, but still the guidelines are not in place where all the utilities which are trying to come up with the tenders are in, means we can say it hibernated the upcoming tenders. So yeah, this was maybe the way forward for BESS development. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any quick questions for him before the next speaker comes on? I don't want to monopolize the discussion here, I'm sorry. Everyone is very happy with you. Come, please, come.
So, they call it the pen is mightier than the sword. So, Sanjay, you know, purposefully I wanted to speak the last. So I wanted you to speak the last so that you can sum it up.
Yeah, Chintan, thanks a lot. In fact,
Before you start, let me introduce this gentleman. He is a journalist in the power sector for the last, 100 years? Almost. I have known him for 20, 30 years. And a very knowledgeable person. Plus, he's from media. And I want to hear what he has to say. Primarily, I think you're based in Maharashtra, but he has an all-India vision. Over to you. Is that okay?
thanks, Mr. Dol. Chintan, in fact, you have made my task quite easy. As a journalist, we are not supposed to speak, but write, analyze, and also conceptualize. So thanks a lot for this. What I have heard from yesterday and today's debates and whatever panel discussions, 3-4 major points which I'm going to focus. I don't want to wait between the lunch. What I have gathered from the data which I have collected from the Ministry of Power, Renewables, United Nations, World Bank and whatnot, I could see that this net zero 2050, 2050 and 2070, the investment opportunity as a journalist and that too covering business and infrastructure, I can see it's a $13 trillion investment opportunity for India. When we are talking about adding renewable to about 500 gigawatt up to 2030, I think this is the important feature and element as a journalist, I feel, where the government, both the federal and the states, the private sector, the regulators definitely have a major role to play and the other stakeholders also. Secondly, but while doing so, there are a lot of negatives that I could make. I mean, there has been much of hype about giving a lot of incentives, concessions by the government of India, center, and couple of other, private sector coming out with their own policies and whatnot for the implementation. But what I could gather after seeing a lot of presentations and all, very interesting challenges which I could make out while going ahead with this kind of a task is that, one, the intermittent nature of solar and wind power is one of the biggest obstacles which I could as a journalist see while carrying forward and achieving this target. This poses quite difficulties in matching electricity supply with fluctuating demand and developing effective energy storage that Chintan and Mr. Dole and everybody is talking about. As a journalist, we definitely see is a major challenge as everybody is again looking at China. But I don't think that we must follow the Chinese model, what India is doing, but there is a huge task which is waiting for us. So one, the storage solutions such as advanced batteries and pump hydro storage. Again, it's an issue. As I've been covering Maharashtra just a month ago, as Dr. Dev was here as the Secretary, MERC Chairman and CRC, I know Maharashtra was one of the states which has come out with a pump storage policy. They have identified about 20 locations. Unfortunately, there has been no takers so far. I mean, already NTPC, NHPC, they have been also basically brought in, roped in to help, the state going ahead. Again, a major issue. So how it can be done? Just an example, just last month, Mahagenco, Mr. Dole knows, one of the biggest generators in Maharashtra, almost 7,000 plus megawatt coal and the rest other gas and whatnot. They came out with EPC solar, 600 megawatt. 6 times they had to give an extension, no takers. Finally, the tender was closed on 2nd of January. Till today, they have yet to open the technical bid, decide on the financial bid, and what will happen, God knows. Our government here, Maharashtra government, has given a target to Mahagenco to add about 2,500 megawatt of solar-based power project, as they want that something is kicking and up and running by the next assembly elections, which are due in September, October. But I feel it is a huge challenge for the state and the Mahagenco to carry. So the second, what I could, as a journalist, see is grid integration and infrastructure upgrades. Everybody is talking about, initially we had that conventional energy grid. Now we are mixing that. As Mr. Dev was there and a couple of other, CRC, state regulators were coming with their regulations. I, as a journalist, see this is a huge task which is cut out there. How this can be done, that's another challenge. A smart grid that dynamically balances supply and demand will be crucial in optimizing renewable energy use. I mean, how this can be done, again, an issue as a journalist we keep on asking. Third, very interestingly, which I could make is this, the high initial costs. I mean, a lot of, recently Economic Times came out, Economic Times about 4 days ago came out a very interesting edit. There is a debate which is going on. On the one hand, we are definitely going ahead with capacity addition of conventional power. At the same time, we are pursuing and chasing this 500 gigawatt of renewable. Are we going to sacrifice the conventional thing? I mean, everybody talks about what will happen to the coal-based power projects. Most of the states are relying still on that. So as a journalist, I have definitely a question how this issue can be sorted out. I mean, you like experts can definitely have much of knowledge, but what we are going and listening about it, writing about it, this is a one more challenge which I could see. And in that, again, the cost of solar panels, wind turbines, other equipment and storage systems may deter some investors and governments from committing fully to renewable energy initiatives. And last but not the least, again, an issue, I mean, land use and environmental. I think in the previous, Mr. Prashad talked about, the NGOs making a lot of noise about, say, if it is coming, because I have been covering Jaitapur power project in Maharashtra. 2010, it was conceptualized by Nuclear Power Corporation. Post Fukushima, everything has got stuck up. Now almost, 13 years, project has yet to come in. Again, there has been huge protest. Same thing with the, Maharashtra is having one of the biggest ever refinery, 60 million tons per annum. Again, it is embroiled into controversy. So what I'm going at is that, again, the land use and the environment concerns are yet to be addressed. What I feel, this is again a major challenge. So to put this entire perspective together and conclude, 100%, this is a huge investment opportunity for a country like India. Again, to have a mark at the global level, but both the center, the states, and all the stakeholders will come together and will have to, in fact, the regulators play an important role to sort out the regulations and make it much more clearer. What I feel as a journalist, this definitely task can be achieved, but with a lot of roadblocks and hurdles. And I strongly feel with such kind of debates and discussions will carry forward and give much of leg up. So thanks a lot, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. I'll just put some numbers to your ideas. The total investment needed only for renewables from today till 2030, if you are targeting 500 gigawatt, it's something in the vicinity of 32 lakh crores. Around 15 lakh crores additional will go to hydrogen, and around something like 10,000 to 12,000 crores will go towards setting up supply chain and manufacturing. So total kitty size of 50 lakh crore of investment that we are talking about for the future, which also triggers that how much of which, how can you actually get a debt capital of 42 lakh crores roughly. That's going to be $1 million question. That means you need to deepen the bond market. That's the only way out. Term lending cannot be met from 42 lakh crores. So that's another set of things. You need to create green bond markets in India, deepen it, make it asset backed. That is something, then essentially allow the money market to flow in this particular vehicle. So that will ease out the debt part pretty well. I think, Harry, we are within 15, no, first of all, within 15 minutes of deviation, we have closed the program.
Congratulations. I think he's done a damn good job. A house, applaud for the speakers and Chintan Bhai. Yes, sir. Question.
Yeah, I have a question from Mr. Vivek Sharma. He mentioned that Adanis are developing 6 gigawatt of storage capacity, pump storage capacity. So what are the challenges you are facing in developing this capacity, and what regulatory and policy intervention you would like from the government and regulators to ease the development of the pump storage plants?
And also, where are the projects coming up? He's also setting it up.
What mode? What mode? Whether is it?
He said Kerala, na?
So just to answer, our portfolio of 5,600 megawatt to be precise, I mentioned 600 around, is spread over Andhra, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra. These are 3 states right now. We are targeting also in Telangana and Odisha. Chitravati is our first project in Andhra, which is 500 megawatt. It is under construction. From the experience till now, I think the initial process of DPR and clearance we have requested in the pump storage is the future for managing the grid along with solar. So I would say initially we felt that they take significant times in terms of clearances, which now has been curtailed significantly. I think as we speak now, the process has started for everybody, including Greenco is not here, but Greenco is the second largest portfolio they have. Construction challenges are very site specific, it remains, and therefore the site selection becomes important. The sites which we are selecting, we are preferring the sites which at least have one natural dam, either upstream or downstream, so the second one has to be made. If 2 has to be made, then the cost goes up broadly. So the site selection has to be careful. It will be very site specific in terms of challenges of execution. Third most important point, and people normally say so, and rightly so, because of the experience of hydro has been bad in India. It has not reached the required capacity, or our expectation was very high, considering that whether a hydro in a hilly station or a hill area is the greater viable option. I mentioned the states, we are looking more at the peninsular. So the other geological challenges are less there. Unlike the typical conventional hydro, which was more centric towards north or northeast. So we have moved that particular challenge, which we try to address by selecting the site which are not prone to these kind of issues. I hope I answered the question. In terms of regulation rules, I think the only one point which is still pending, they have come up with the national framework for ESS, including pump storage, to mention very clearly that input charges like ED and all should not be charged to them. But the states still have to adopt it. I'll give an example. If you see the Odisha PSP or ESS policy, it says that we are giving exemption for input power of 50% ED. So there is a concern right now to have that replicated in states, because it's very important question what Harry mentioned, that it is a generator or a distributor or a consumer. So moment it is a consumer, the charges comes into play. So there is a framework which defines various application where it calls with RE for supplying, delivering power, especially says during the peak hours, it will be considered a generator. So this is right now.
Yeah, so what you're saying is even pump storage has the same challenge as battery storage.
Yeah, same.
वही challenge है ना? In terms of, I'm talking about in terms of legal.
नहीं, अगर आप मैंने ना आप जब बात कर रहे थे मैंने specially open किया है. There is storage with generation, storage with transmission, storage with distribution, standalone ESS. It says storage for ancillary, lease and sale. So they have defined 4.1 to 4.6 various categories. This will fall in the storage with generation. It says ESS integrated. ESS is both battery and PSP. Integrated with RE project provides dispatchable and firm RE power to procurer and reduces RE curtailment, while ESS integrated with conventional project improves flexibility of conventional generation. So the point is, it is called ESS storage with generation.
So basically what you are saying, for example, I have Bhakra Byaz project and I am doing a pump storage, would I pick up some?
No. So your procurer, it depends on your procurer and application. So here it's clear, if your procurer wants a power which is round the clock and it becomes part of that integrated project, it becomes a generator.
Sir, I understand. I'm slightly
but Harry,
slow.
you can't categorize a storage plant as a consumer.
You can't.
It is not
but it's not even generating, na?
It is not using electricity for its own use. So what it is doing, for example, a PSP plant is converting the electrical energy taken from the grid to potential energy and then converting into the electrical energy again
I'm with
and
you.
feeding it back to the grid.
With you, sir, 100%.
So it is not consuming any electricity for its own use. So it cannot be a consumer.
Loss to hoga na, sir, pumping it up?
Loss hai, that is in the
Legal status to ESS, Electricity Amendment Rules 2022. It is through rules, as you know, this government has bypassed the act by bringing rules from LPS to everything. So this is again one of them. It has issued rules, and in through rules they have defined ESS to give some legal teeth in a different category. So ES storage can be a distribution also, provided the application is load center within that distribution.
I think we'll discuss this over lunch, if it's okay with you. Any other question? Yes, sir. You don't want to have lunch, that is obvious. Mike.
Yeah, thanks to all the interesting insights from different speakers. I have two questions, if I'm allowed to ask. One is, we're looking at the kind of investments required for solar and wind power projects. One of the challenges is acquisition of land. You know, recently what happened in Bellary, ArcelorMittal project was cancelled because the Supreme Court also intervened, saying that the right compensation has to be paid to the people who are losing land. So this is there in many states, and many states, the state government is now going away from acquisition of land, and the parties who are interested or investing should have a tie-up with the farmers or whoever is the seller. So what is the, what is the scenario in terms of how much land will be required and what are the challenges associated with that? The second question is on when you have this kind of investments happening, what would be the sustainability of coal-based state enterprises and also the discoms in the states, because they are not much interested in renewables. They want to protect their terrain and all that. So these are two different aspects. If you
Who is the question addressed to?
Anybody, sir.
Okay, so I'll hand over the mic to the experts. I just want to say one thing. In the old days, it was this or that, thermal versus renewable. Now I can tell you with reasonable authority, the way we are going in this country and the way demand is rising, we need this and that. So we're not question of protecting thermal or protecting renewable, we need everything. We need huge amount of capacity and we need it as of yesterday. Okay? Go ahead.
Land always has been a challenge, in the past also, current also, in the future also. But the good part is, now the project sizes are going up. Initially the project size was smaller. So the type of dealings or the networking or the activity here to be done on a ground level was also a smaller size. Now, the latest tender, one single project of 1700 megawatt RE capacity, one single project. So it's much easier to essentially acquire land because it's a much larger project. You can deploy more teams and all. And I agree with you, it has to be a bilateral thing only. More importantly, particularly in renewables now, people have stopped buying land. Most of the land is on lease, even private lease. So we get a 30 years lease, so the farmer does not lose land. He gets a lease income. The lease income is almost equivalent to the farm income. So something in the range of 30,000 rupees per acre per year. Plus you get a upfront security deposit lying with them. So it's a win-win solution now the industry has created. Because this land prices is only a negligible amount of the project cost. Correct. This is something that has been worked out now.
Okay, I think we tried our best to address your question, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to switch now to have lunch and get ready for the next session, which is on, if I remember correctly, AI and how we can reduce losses for discoms and everybody else. So over to lunch. By the way, lunch is in the dining hall? Right. Senior citizens like me are allowed to use the buggy. The rest of you walk in the sun. It's good for you to have vitamin D. Bye.